Good morning. My name is Kevin Johnson, and today we are going to discuss emergency management within your community. So, we have all lived through major disasters in our life. Many of us can remember the exact environment we were in when that plane struck the Twin Towers, or the horrific moment that a shooter in Las Vegas fired upon concert goers from a hotel window. Although we all remember these specific events, not many of us understand how that incident was managed and who was in charge, or where all the resources that were needed came from. This is exactly what we're going to discuss today, the role of emergency managers. Now, at some point, we all experience some type of disaster. This could be an act of terrorism or a weather event. It's important that you understand who is working for you within your community and understand who is helping your community respond and recover from these disasters and how that can assist you and your family in being more prepared. Our thesis statement is that emergency management is a very important field that assists with response, recovery, mitigation, and prevention of major disasters. We're going to get more into detail of those four phases in just a minute. So, I began my career as a 911 dispatcher when I was 18 years old. This helped me gain a clear understanding of local public safety response protocols. It kind of set the stage for me to build upon my career as I then moved into a role as an emergency management specialist. This was with a local department, and it helped me understand the management side of responding to large scale events, what resources were needed, what personnel were needed, and what this all brought to the table. For the past 3 years, I have held the position of Operations Section Chief and Exercise Specialist for the state of Georgia. So I am a part of all large scale events. This includes statewide disasters that are declarations of emergency from our governor, Brian Kemp. So we're going to cover three main topics today. Our first topic, we will discuss what emergency management is. Our second, we will discuss the four phases of emergency management. And finally, we're going to discuss why it's important to know your local EMA departments and to get involved. So let's begin with what is emergency management? Windsor article, it's actually a city who published this article, states emergency management is planning for and handling of risk that may impact communities, regions, or countries. So when we're talking about disasters or large-scale events, this includes both man-made and natural disasters. When we're talking about man-made disasters, this is going to be our active shooters, our bombings, our acts of terrorism. And our natural disasters, which are a lot more common here in Georgia, are going to include our hurricanes, floodings, earthquakes, any kind of weather-related events, droughts, anything that could impact us that we don't have control over that is not created by man. So every county in the state of Georgia has their own emergency management agency. There are 159 total counties. There are some major cities within our state that have their own emergency management agencies as well. The city of Savannah, the city of Atlanta, they have to be pretty large to be able to sustain their own department within a city, but there are a few out there. The state of Georgia has its own department. That's who I'm employed by now. So it's Georgia Emergency Management Agency and Homeland Security. I fall under the Homeland Security branch with a focus on exercising domestic terrorism and active shooters within schools. There's also that third tier, the federal level, which is FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they assist with all large-scale disasters. They play more of a financial role, where they will assist in funding, not necessarily resources as much as the state will. So your local emergency managers are going to request resources that are needed for your county's response from the state, and the state will send our resources and hopefully some financial aid along with the FEMA help. So now that we've covered the base layer of emergency management, let's take a deeper dive into the cycle, the consistent cycle that we stay on in emergency management work. So this is the four phases of emergency management. Phase one is mitigation, meaning to prevent future emergencies and take steps to minimize the effects. This takes place before disaster strikes. It's ensuring like culverts and floodplains are established, evacuation routes are established. This is to make sure that we try to lessen the effect of any disasters that might take place. Phase two is preparedness, meaning to take action ahead of time and to be ready for emergency. Unlike mitigation, this is where we're talking about training, education, our first responders going through exercises, reviewing their plans and policies, holding classes for civilians, stuff like that, making preparedness kits for your homes. Phase three is our response phase. This is the phase that most people are familiar with. This is to protect people and property in the wake of an emergence disaster. So this occurs immediately after the disaster takes place. This is when all of our public safety first responders are arriving on scene. We're talking about triaging patients, body recovery, the immediate effects of a disaster, and the actions that we take as our response phase. Phase four is the recovery phase, meaning we rebuild after the disaster efforts. So this is our debris removal, our financial reimbursements, our updating our policy and protocols, and a response to the corrective actions that we found during our response phase. Everything that we do during the recovery phase leads us back to phase one and our mitigation phase, where we identify places that need work so that we can help prevent things in the future. Okay, I know I'm trying to move quick because I got a lot of content here. So now that you have a better understanding of how local emergency management agency works, let's discuss why it's important to get involved with your local agencies. So as I mentioned earlier, every single county has a local emergency management agency, and it's their goal to make sure their citizens and their counties are prepared. So as a citizen within your county, you must remember during a disaster, you are the help until help arrives. It's important to get training and tools needed to help protect your family and home during a disaster. A big part of that and a great education source is a CERT team. That is a community emergency response team. A community emergency response team program educates individuals about disaster preparedness for hazards that may impact their area and trains them in basic disaster response skills such as fire safety, light search and rescue, team organization, and disaster medical operations. So this is offered through your local emergency management department. Another key thing about getting to know your local EMA department is that they are going to be familiar with the specific threats and hazards that you have within your community. So you will have firsthand knowledge of how to prepare for specific things that are going to impact you. All right, on to the conclusion. I'm so glad you guys stuck with me. We talked about how emergency management takes place inside your community, what the four phases of emergency management are, and why it's important for you to get to know your local EMA department. Emergency management is a very important field that assists with the response, recovery, mitigation, and prevention of major disasters. So in conclusion, it's important that you are prepared for whatever might impact you and your family's safety. Understanding the role of emergency managers and being willing to get involved could help save lives within your community. It's important that you do your part, and emergency managers are there to help. Thank you, guys.